Well, I guess we'll give it a start. Can you guys hear me? Testing, testing. Ah, good. So I'm not just talking to myself. All right. So this lecture is, as I've said, on Handicap Go. We're going to ideally look at three games this evening. We may only get to the first two. The first one is a game with at least one player that most of you probably will know, the one and only Takemiya Masaki. At the time, he was only 12 years old, and he was playing against his sensei, and it was a four-stone game. And one of the things I really liked about this game is even at this early stage, well, comparatively in his Go career, he was you could already see his desire to build large moyos, the style that he's famous for. You can already see it start to come out. So the first game is a great example of how you should play a handicap game. The second game we're going to look at is a amateur game between a 3Q and a 2-dan, also a four-stone game, and that one is a great example of how not to play a handicap game as black. I should say as black. Um, and then, if we have time, I have a third game that we're going to look at, which is also a professional game. It's actually a five-stone game between Kato Masao and Kitani Minoru. When it was just a amateur. Basically, he said he was an amateur five-dan. So some of the commentary from this game, actually, it's interesting for the professional games. The professionals themselves actually commented on them decades later. The Takemiya commented on his own game decades later, so we're gonna get to see what the professionals thought, and then we're gonna also look into some of the variations and why each player chose what. But the main thing we're gonna look at in this game is the particular ideas that each player focuses on. Well, no. Kitani was the stronger player at the time. He was the sensei. All right, so without further ado, let's get started with Takemiya's game. Yeah, that's kind of scary. So White's strategy here is, of course, pretty simplistic. This is a move that you may sometimes see in handicap games and is pretty common. It seems like a strangely spaced extension, and it's there for a reason. Why would White choose to play a move like C11 rather than some standard basic Joseki that I'm sure we're all familiar with? Any ideas? Why would White choose to play this way? Better shape when kicked. More spaced out. C14 follow-up, corner still open. Yeah, all valid reasons. So, the key that White wants here is White does not want the board to become very solid very quickly. So, if White just played a standard, Joseki along these lines, I mean, this is possible for White. But the position here, especially in the corner, is already somewhat settled. And so White's idea is to keep an open position, and this makes the calculations for Black more complicated. Black will now need to figure out later on in the game, well, how should he invade? How should he invade? When should he invade? All these sorts of decisions by immediately stepping back from normal Joseki. It can make the game more fighting oriented. This is and it also of course has a very nice follow up around C14 later. So let's see how Black responds. So Black, of course, takes a gigantic move, and there's really no complaints about it. It's just big, and White continues his strategy of playing around the board, and this time does a slightly different extension. It's the same general idea. And now Black plays a checking extension, right at R6. So the question we have here is, what should White do about this? In an even game, it's easy to say, well, he should, of course, just play R11 and connect his stones. And so the question for a handicap game is that enough for White? What does White do if Black wants to be aggressive? Should White play elsewhere? What do you guys think? White should leave it. White should leave it for H3. Any particular reason? L3. K3, lots of ideas. Let's see. The actual move in our game was L3. And the reason being why L3 is better than a move like K3 is that it gives white this lovely two-space extension on either side that he likes, giving white a fair amount of flexibility. Now, of course, it leaves white's two stones on the right spaced out, but we have to remember that, first of all, the R8 stone can still jump out if it's not in danger, and if the R14 stone is in danger, black still has or white still has this R17 slide into the corner. So white's position for a handicap game, it's still an okay position for white to manage with. So black continues with a pretty standard checking extension on one side. The idea being here, of course, is to push white along the bottom and then allow black to solidify his corner. So it seems that white obliges, and what should black do here? Directly seal the corner with Q2. P2. Kick on auto mode. Well, actually, taking the corner is, of course, the general idea. But, there's a lot of different ways to take the corner. And in this particular case, the kick here, I believe, is a bit better than just taking the corner with Q2, and we'll see why in a second. If black just takes the Q2, yeah, it overconcentrates white. So this isn't necessarily a bad move. Locally it's a great move. It attacks white, it solidifies the corner, no real complaints about it. But if we continue up here, yeah, it makes white a little overconcentrated, and now black has a good follow-up. What's black's follow-up move right now? Classic good shape move. Well, your auto mode is pretty accurate. That is indeed a 12-year-old Takemiya's move. And this is a very strong move here. If we look at the whole board, first of all, it does a fair amount of damage to R8, and that's very nice. Second, it makes the R3 weakness disappear for the most part. And third, it attacks this white group around O3. And it's something like a triple purpose move. It's a very good move for black to play here. So Takemiya has thus far played a really superb game. And so white now, since his stones are getting so weak, white has little choice but to defend himself. And now black plays another checking extension. And so once again we're presented with the question should black defend, or should white defend his stones? And if so, how should he defend his stones? Or if not, where else on the board should he play? Is there a particularly important area that white might want to play in right now rather than defend? Any ideas? Top. The top is pretty big though. 19 spaces across. What on top? One idea at D17, F17. D17 slash F17, E18. Very fun technique. So there are lots of ideas here, and it's difficult to say necessarily which is the absolute best technique, although I would be a little bit skeptical of playing F17 like this. I fear it's just going to provoke black to play this way. And black's corner isn't necessarily perfect here, but if black just continues on playing like this, seems that all white stones can do is make a small little one space extension. And it seems that white may not be particularly thrilled with his result. But white's move in the game actually is D17, which is a very, very common move in handicap games. And black's move is pretty standard. And now white plays a move specifically for handicap games, the crosscut. And so white's idea here is to make the game complicated. This is not a standard move, it's more of a handicap game move. If black responds properly, he can end up with a fine result. So then the question becomes, well, what is the proper response? Any ideas? Black to play? Takemiya is technically he's already a professional at the time, actually, but he's 12 years old and very, very new to being a professional, and his teacher is a 9-dan professional, and it's a 4-stone game. So the universal choice seems to be D15. Well, you guys seem to be thinking like Takemiya. That was indeed his move. And so now white takes the Hane over there and pulls back here, and it's a pretty standard technique. But this next move is a little bit interesting, I think. What should black do now? We have a ID at F16, G17. Any other suggestions? H17, hold back 1. Yeah, all good ideas. So the classic defensive move here would be B18. Yeah, this is the classic defensive move, and we can't say that this is necessarily a bad move, but this isn't black's choice here. Black wants to be more aggressive because, you know, white can simply respond here, and black is still happy with this, but white's group is pretty safe. So actually, black's move is the very aggressive G17. The idea is, of course, to prevent white from making 2 eyes immediately, and also indirectly defend black from this invasion here. And so really, you know, Takemiya, despite being 12 years old, has really played a fantastic game thus far. And he really hasn't lost almost any of his 2-stone handicap just yet, or his 4-stone handicap just yet. So white, of course, takes his free sente move, and then has no choice but to try and get out. And so what's black's next play? Should he continue the chase? Is there somewhere else on the board that is more important? What move and why? One suggestion for the turn. One suggestion at L5. Lots of interesting suggestions. So actually, black's move is neither of these moves. No, an attack on the bottom actually is interesting potentially right now. Around L5, that wasn't what Takemiya decided, but this is definitely an interesting move to think about. This move, I'm not a huge fan of this move because this really doesn't gain black that much. I mean, black has you know, this small extension right here. And even though black is building this wall, I mean, C11 already isn't strong, and it's not like E15 makes it that much weaker. So this is probably just going to provoke white to play a move like this, and white's going to be happy, or relatively speaking, happier. So what black actually ends up doing is just a simple keep up the attack move with G15. This, of course, expands black's framework on the top side, continues attacking white, keeps white without his eyes. It's a sente move, and it's a pretty powerful one at that. And white has little choice but to respond with F18. And so, once again, as we will constantly face in these games, in these type of situations, we're at a juncture here. Should black continue just building his top area with a move like G18, or is there potentially somewhere else on the board that's more important than G18? What's your guys' feeling? What's the critical point? C8, C9. Gotta pincer those stones. The left attack. Well, congratulations. You have a good foresight. That was indeed Takemiya's idea. He's already built up strength outside, and this is white's last group that's weak, and Takemiya is just you know, plain and simple, continuing his attack around the board. He's happily taking advantage of white's weak stones. And so this actually is a very clever tesuji that white has done. Just a small one, but it's still potentially important. The idea being for him that if black resists like this, then what does white do if black attempts to resist? Yep, plain and simple. C14. And then white suddenly makes C11 a lot stronger. Almost the right idea. C14 actually isn't the best move for black. What's a slightly better move for black than c14? Slightly better move? Yep, c15. Yep, you do not want to give that free sente move. There's no reason. Because now if white plays e15, it's 100% gote. I mean, black would never play this move here. That's kind of silly. So now white decides to, white really has no choice but to help c6 out. If he lets black take a move at c4, the game is basically lost from lack of territory. So white has little choice in the matter but to take the corner. And this is pretty standard result. And now white jumps out here. And here we see Takemiya's first real mistake in the game. He berated himself, in his review afterwards, that here was his first real mistake in the game. How do you figure out c9 or c8? That's actually a good question to look at. Takemiya Masaki, he's a professional, but a very young professional at the time. He's 12 years old. So, the difference between a c9 and c8, sometimes it's not a huge difference, but in this case, it's which stone do you want to put more pressure on? Yeah. In this particular situation, it's which stone do you want to put more pressure on? And black wanted to put more pressure on c11 at the moment, because, c6, whether or not black plays c9 or c8, it doesn't really matter. White can still just dive into the corner. So in this case, since neither move really mattered that much with regard to c8, or with regard to c6, then black chose to do this. Also, after white invades the corner, c9 is a little bit further away, and so a little bit less over-concentrated. So that was his idea with it. So we move on, and as I was saying, right here, Takemiya makes his first real mistake of the game. So any ideas? What should black do here? There's a move that black really should consider playing. Lots of ideas for f2. No others. Just f2. Oh, some suggestions around e9. Suggestion at k5. Definitely interesting ideas. Okay, let's take a look at some of these. Oh, k10, of course, someone has to suggest tengen. So Takemiya's move, which he later berated himself for a mistake, was f2, which is not a great move for black here, even though it's the classic move that we often see. Because we'll see why in a second, why it's not the ideal move. So let's see. E9 isn't a terrible move, but the problem with it is it seems like black is trying to build points right in this area right here. But my problem is that this is kind of shallow. It's only 3 spaces deep, maybe 3.5 spaces deep. And this is not the ideal distance that black wants to be building a moyo. He might, and also e15 is really stopping him. If he had e15, I would like a move maybe like e9 a lot more. So actually, Takemiya said later that the ideal move for black here is the simple, as you said, e15. This does a lot for black. White stones are still horribly weak. Black stones are all connected and all strong, and now white has to desperately figure out somehow how to plunge into this left side and somehow reduce it all. And white can probably get in there and probably reduce some of it, but at the end of the day, black is still going to make a huge chunk of points out there. Monstrous chunk of points. Yeah, but Takemiya makes a mistake here with the generic f2. Sometimes f2 is good, but the problem here is, let's look at the j3 right here. J3 is kind of over-concentrated. And so white finishes up his corner, and black still owes a move. Black would be loath to not play another move here. So this is actually a good move for black in terms of developing his moyo, but if we look at j3 now, it's not really a fantastic extension. Who's white here? White is his sensei, Takamine Escape, although my pronunciation is probably messed up. So this isn't ideal for black, but nevertheless, this isn't a huge mistake. So black is Takemiya is still doing great thus far, and so now white takes this chance to immediately try and ruin black's moyo. And black decides to defend, and now white plays that gigantic move of e15, which is really just a fantastic move to play. It helps to seal black in this little corner area, helps e11 to escape. It's a really multi-purpose move. Black, of course, will cut, desiring to keep white's e11 stones weak. And white decides to resist strongly. White has little choice here but to resist. Yeah, right. This whole thing would have not been possible. Right, c4. Yeah, that e15 move wouldn't have been possible without c14 earlier. These types of little things really add up in a game. So black pushes through, and then of course defends his corner. And the idea being here, of course, is to attack white stones. And so the next moves aren't particularly complicated, just a very simple one space extension for white, and a simple one space defense for black. And then white has little choice but to continue running with his stones. And so black's still fairly satisfied with himself. I mean, white has done some damage to the left side, but black's bottom left isn't that gigantic. And white's stones are not strong yet, but they're out into the center, which is certainly something. And so black takes this great sente move at g18. Yeah, the bottom for black around j3 is over-concentrated. You have a 2-space extension from a pretty gigantic wall. And white has no choice but to play a18 if he wants to live. So overall here, Takemiya is still thrilled. And now black takes a critical move. p2 just does wonders. Any remaining, residual AGA that might have existed around r3, any evil little reduction test cheese, they all disappear. This makes black's corner as hard as nails, and it really weakens white's stones if white chooses not to defend. He really has little choice in the matter. But white white can't defend at the moment because the whole territory thing. So this is white's strategy essentially: invade everywhere, and then dare black to attack. And even if black does get an attack, and should get a good attack, the idea for white is that white should be able to outfight him. That's at least the theory that the stronger player is going on here. And so what happens next is a pretty standard sequence that I'm sure you're familiar with. And locally, white is very happy to expand out his territory, and black, of course, loses territorially locally. But the critical aspect here is that black has gotten himself sente. Yeah, gote and sente. Black has gotten himself for a critical sente. White has left his O3 stones to cry. And so now the next move here really shows off Takemiya's skill. Finding the next move here is really difficult. So the question here is, looking at the whole board, what is black's next move? Let's see. Takemiya at the time was a very new professional. The gap between pros at the time was larger. Between new pros and top pros was larger than it is today. So he was 12 years old, and he was playing his 9-dan sente. And this was interestingly, this was actually his last 4-stone game against the sensei. He did so well in this game that afterwards they only played at 3 stones, and then quickly moved up to smaller handicaps. So, question remains: what is black's move? So let's say we have a O2 suggestion. We have a O11 suggestion, M4, K10, Frozen, fire away if you'd like. Give your guesses. N5, L5. All interesting ideas. N6. So these are all good moves in terms of attacking in terms of attacking one of the groups, but Takemiya's next move is actually very nice because he decides to attack both of White's groups at the same time after... Oh, no, I have my move order messed up. I'm sorry. He plays N5 first. Well, I'll be damned. I guess my memory of the game isn't perfect. Yeah, N5 is a great move. I shouldn't have done that. Yeah, Frozen, congratulations. So, okay, here is his brilliant move. After the brilliant N5, which is a fantastic move, Black plays this fantastic splitting move. And this is really powerful here. You know, he's attacking both stones at the same time, and neither of White's groups is alive yet. So, first question is, which of White's groups is more desperate? Which White group does he have to follow up, or does he have to defend first? Lots of ideas. Yeah, no choice. You really have to defend the bottom group here. It's gonna die if White doesn't play another move. So White does. White spends that. White is really forced to spend another move at O2 just to make sure his group can live. And this gives Black the perfect opportunity to, as Frozen suggested, play this L11 move. And now White is very sad. Black is pretty thick all around, and Black is brilliantly using his thickness to beat up White. And so now White has to make his stones live. And you know, an important point to note here is that Black's intention here isn't necessarily to kill White stones. Black doesn't need to kill White stones. All Black needs is to attack White's stones hard enough that he can make substantial profit from it. Yeah, there's no need to really try an all-out kill here. There's just too much space. So White is really forced to play moves like this. And Black is really rather happy from this exchange that they've had. And so here, actually, Takemiya makes a small mistake, as we're going to see later. We're going to see later why. But Takemiya actually, according to himself, he should have played this move. As we're going to see later, this forcing move is really, really important for Black's shape. It's basically something of a reading battle. But first off, Black, of course, this is a good time to use a peep, basically attacking White's shape. And then Black defends himself. And so White now makes a pretty standard way of increasing his eye space. And now White makes this very, very pretty move to basically get himself out. And yeah, F14 is a very, very pretty move. And Takemiya apparently said that he was very frustrated here because he saw now what White's intentions are. And notice that this move at F17 is no longer 100% sensei, because now White can just respond like this. So F17 has lost its sensei value, but you know, then again, this is still not a gigantic mistake. This is still a comparatively small mistake, and so White takes this. So Black takes this opportunity to continue his attack on the bottom, and then White defends, of course, and Black, you know, defends pretty simple stuff. Nothing particularly complicated. And now this is a very clever move, I thought. And Takemiya's sensei was apparently happy, or Takemiya was apparently impressed with his sensei. That you know, he hadn't really thought about this move that much. But this is a very clever move from his sensei to get himself out. We're going to see how it works. So Black, of course, has no choice but to cut. And now White plays this very lovely move at P4. And Black has little choice but to defend himself, and then White jumps up. And the critical part here is that right when White jumps out here, rather than Black following up, because of that cutting point that White has created, Black has no choice but to play this Atari at 07 or risk himself getting cut. And this gives White the opportunity to escape here. And it's very important for White, of course, to get out of there. And of course, Black still isn't sad. I mean, this is, you know, once again, in the grand scheme of things, this is a small thing. But nevertheless, White is happy to have gotten himself out. And so now we're going to see this fight right here. And we're going to see exactly why this F17 move was so critical. that black doesn't have. So first off, white makes himself stronger here. First of all, white makes himself stronger. And this is actually an interesting bit of reading. If I looked at this after the game, I was wondering, black didn't play here. Instead, black plays here. And, my question is, why didn't black play M15? And but if you read out a little bit, something really interesting happens. If this occurs, and white wedges in, and black defends himself, and white now plays this pretty move at J15, black has no choice but to defend here. But then another problem arises, and white has this brilliant move. And notice, because of this exchange earlier, suddenly if black attempts to keep his stones like this, white can do this, and black is of course horrified by this result, obviously. So this was an important point, but something I might have missed if I was Takemiya in this game. But yeah, so M16 is really important for black, but regardless, white still has an evil ko. And so white plays out those moves. And now we're going to see, so really, a ko happens here, a really, really big ko. But let's look for a second. We talked about this F17 move. What would have happened if black had made this move and white had made this move? Well, when black comes here, white has a really rather clever move to play. Any ideas? What's black's move here? H15, H17, H17, J16. Right you are, hero. J16 it is. Yeah, this is a particularly very pretty move. Yeah, if white attempts to cut, of course, it fails miserably. And if white captures, it still fails miserably. So this manages to connect black safely. But without that exchange, black can no longer do this, because now white just does this. And black, of course, is quite sad about the result. So black really has no choice here but to fight a ko. And this is white's first ko threat. And so the question is, should black respond to the ko threat? Any ideas? Is it a ko threat worth responding to? Is it big enough? We have 2 yeses. Two yeses. Well, the answer is yes, you're right. Takemiya does take it F16 because, losing that group up there is big, but black capturing here is very important for basically keeping all of his stones safe. And this is just not a fight that black wants to have. If black defends like this and white defends like this, black is in a real bind. I mean, if white manages to capture, if white manages to ignore black's threat and capture here, this is potentially a even larger loss for black than losing his upper left group. Not to mention all of white stones becoming instantly super powerful. And black stones outside here are starting to look a little bit thin in the wake of white's powerful new thickness. So even though black lost some points here, and black is sad for losing points, if we look at the scale of the game and we count it out, black is still doing fine here. So this is actually a good point to take a look at the score. Let's take a minute here. Who would like to try and give the score estimate a guess? What's the score looking like? We'll wait a second. Don't worry. Take about a minute. Score estimate says black plus 40. Don't believe score. Don't believe a score estimator. I think black plus 15-ish. Yeah. So we can. It really depends. There's still a lot of the game to go. Um, I would say, yeah, it's probably 0.5. It's a handicap game. So if you were to ask me, I would say game is probably black plus 15 points, maybe 15 points. I think is playable, perhaps a little bit more. Really depends how good the player's Yosei is. But this isn't a counting lecture, and we have other games to get to, so we can talk about that later if you guys want. So black takes this opportunity to continue to attack white's shape, and white has to defend. And black is just, taking his time, continuing his attack. And now we get some real fighting that starts up. And the moves aren't that complicated. This, though, is black's attempt to really build up his center a bit for himself, interrupt white, of course, on the right side. And also, white's group in the white's L3 group still has some AGA. It's not 110% alive yet. And if white's not careful, if white just carelessly responds to black here, his O3 group may end up dying because black center is looking pretty strong, or at least a lot stronger right now. So R10. I don't know if I consider R10 the common response. I guess it's a possible response. It's a good move. I don't know if I consider it standard. It's yeah, no, well, look, it's a professional's move, so it's a good move. The idea behind it is to prevent this from happening. This can be annoying. And so if you just play diagonally, you can try and resist. Well, I mean, normal, look, it's professional. It's the professional's choice of move here. So, I mean, I guess you can, it's a pretty darn good move. But normal is, of course, sometimes it's normal. It depends on the situation. Here it's pretty good. So black takes this opportunity to basically stop white from having two immediate eyes. And now white needs to figure out how to ensure that he does live. And so white takes this cutting point right here, and they have themselves out a little fight. Pretty one-way fight. There's not much variation that can go on. White has no choice but to cut. Black has no choice but to connect. And white has a little choice but to keep his stones connected up here. White can resist, and black has a little choice in the matter. Now, it looks tempting, of course, for white to want to do something along these lines. The problem, of course, is that white's stones are all going to die. White may have captured 4, but his whole group ends up dying. So this isn't good enough for white, of course. So white has no choice but to connect his stones, giving black the opportunity to save himself. And so now white works to get himself out. And black keeps his shape strong. And white then, does a asking move, and black decides that he's going to... black responds well. White does another asking move. And now finally, after all this time, white has connected up all of his groups, and all of his weak groups are, after all this time, finally safe. But the problem is, as we survey the board, black is still winning on territory, and in fact, you could argue black has potentially increased his lead from earlier, because he's done rather well attacking white's weak groups. So now black plays a very fun cut. Yep. And this, of course, is a very powerful cut that he has. And white is, of course, being greedy. But black plays a very, very clever move here. This is probably the winning move that really just ends the game once and for all. And, of course, the idea, of course, that, white can't really resist it. White has no choice but to try. But if black reads it out properly, this is basically just, an asking move to end the game as white. Because white understands that the game is mostly hopeless here. So black plays a fantastic crosscut. And white now tries to resist, but black plays properly. And it looks really funny. But at the end here, there is just no way for white to win this fight. Yep, sick reading. Not the easiest thing to find. And so this is the last four-stone game that Takemiya ever played against his sensei, because he really he really beat him up with 4 stones. And this is a great example, I think, of how to play a handicap game. Takemiya was, he made some small mistakes, of course, here and there. His extension maybe wasn't perfectly efficient. Maybe his attack wasn't perfect. But, at the end of the day, he attacked when he needed to. He defended when he needed to. He viciously attacked White's weak groups in the center using his thickness. And, he won the game by a solid margin. And this is a great example of how you should play your handicap games. So the next game we're going to see is a game between a 3Q and a 2-dan, a 4-stone game. And I chose this game as a particularly good example. Don't worry, it's no one here. And I chose this game as a particularly good example of how not to play a handicap game when you're the black player. And it's very easy to get into this mindset that we're going to see this black player have. But we all need to work on fighting against it. So let's take a look at this game. You want to do 9 stones? Okay. So, don't worry, I still make plenty of mistakes in my own handicap games. So, this is a 3Q versus 2-dan. And this will be the second game we're going to look at. So, white starts off with a pretty classic strategy to just, dash some stones around the board. And they start off with Joseki. And black peeps in there. And who knows, someone who's not a dan player, who knows what the proper move for black is here. Yes, M2, of course, is the proper technique here. Rankist. Good line. Yes, I am a rankist. So this, of course, is the proper move that black needs to do. But black plays a somewhat silly mistake, deciding that he needs to strengthen his 2 stones here. But all this is really doing is making white's group stronger, at only a minimal benefit for black. And so black seems to believe that making this bamboo joint is this great idea. But when your stones aren't being threatened to be cut in half, bamboo joint isn't necessarily a fantastic idea. There's no real need for black to play it. So the white player responds rather simply. If white wanted to be more aggressive, he could actually consider doing this. Although this is potentially a lot more complicated. But really more complicated than it needs to be. So he just plays really simple. And so now we're in this situation. Black has made himself these stones. And the question is, what should black do here? Should he spend another move to defend his 5 stones? And if so, where? Yeah, M3 is a good question. M2 would, of course, be the proper move. So, does he need to play another move? And if so, where? H3. One idea at H3. Anyone else have a suggestion for black to play? Well, don't underestimate a 4-stone handicap yet. Black may have messed up at this point. Lots of G3, lots of interesting suggestions. Yeah, H3 is probably all right. My personal choice here would probably be J3, simply because I like the shape. But H3, I can't say that H3 is wrong. But regardless, black does something that's very common in a handicap game, which is try K2 to, in essence, keep the whole thing. But the real problem with this is that black's shape is kind of weak. Yeah, black is trying to take too much here, and the easy way to read is like, oh well, this ladder works, and because this ladder works, well, then this position is fine. But there's a lot more that white can do besides the ladder that can really mess up and screw with white's day. So, I mean, at a minimum, later on in the game, of course, if white wanted, even something like this, and suddenly black stones look utterly stupid if this happens. So probably not the ideal way for black to play. And so white continues the attack, and this is another good situation to look at. What should black do about this move? This is a move that's threatening to steal his eyes, and this is a move that's threatening to steal his eyes, and black's 3 stones are now under attack. And what should black do? Should black just go make himself some eyes? Should he run out into the center? And if so, how should he run out into the center? The universal choice seems to be P7. Well, yes, that is actually the move that I would like to play here a lot. The reason for this, of course, is that it gives black 2 very nice continuations. Either black can get a pincer attack on R8, or black can get this N6 move, which works rather well with black's N4 stones. It's a great idea to seal white in here. But black, of course, decides that he wants points. And so black takes R2, and this is a move I want to urge all of you against playing at this exact moment. This does make black some eyes, but it doesn't really do anything else. I mean, it maybe attacks white's group a little bit, but it does nothing to attack R8. And, at the end of the day, it's still hard for black to make any real points here because white has this. So white in this case decides to play Q2 to increase his eye space. I don't know how gigantic a fan I am of this move. I guess it's playable, I suppose. I might like just jumping out here as white. But white does this, and black makes his shape, of course. He can make his shape strong, but black has invested, all these moves, and his corner is still worth, 8 points maybe, at best. And so now now that white has made his corner a little bit stronger, he decides to clamp, which is a perfectly playable technique. And so the question is, how strongly should black resist? Should black all-out resist with a move like K1, or should black just connect back to K3, J3, any ideas? Yeah, so you guys all have the general gist of it, it seems. Yeah, K1 is not a good move. Unfortunately, black's move was indeed K1. And the reason why this is such a bad move is how does white continue up? Yeah, well, 2 real ways to follow up, of course, both of which are bad for black. So the white player here is actually 3Q, and this was actually a relatively slow game. And again, J3 is, of course, the more vicious way of doing it, and this creates a global attack, if you will. And this is possible for white if he wants to be really aggressive, but white's O3 group is not 100% alive yet. So this is possible, but very, very aggressive of a strategy, and it's not necessary for white. White chooses to play simpler at K3, which is perfectly fine. And so black, of course, read that this cut works for him, but the problem being that even after this works for black, white gets to capture the initial 5 stones, and suddenly white's somewhat weak group is now radiating strength out across the board. And black can really be rather depressed that this has happened. But, the advantage of 4 stones is pretty large, and even after this, I can safely say that black is still doing fine in the overall count in the game. So now, once again, black has Sente, which is always nice to have. And so the question becomes, what is black's next move? Any ideas? What should black do here? Black's Zerg Rush. So H17 is definitely a big move. You have R10, another big move. Yeah, all sorts of great possible moves. J17, yeah, all these are playable. There's honestly, white has both of these really weak stones. It's not particularly easy to say which is absolutely the best stone for black to attack. But regardless, black's next move is pretty mediocre. Black decides to play h5, no doubt reading that white cannot cut, of course, because this happens. Oops, because white cannot cut, of course, because this happens. But despite that, it's a pretty mediocre move. There's no real moyo developed on the left side, and it just seems like it's just not doing that much for black. So white takes this opportunity to play a fine approach over here and strengthen his R8 stone, and black pincers right in the middle. And yeah, white of course still has a c4 possible move, sure. And so now both players, white goes on the peep. Or black peeps. I don't know how much I like this peep here actually, as black. It's always really tempting to want to peep, but this makes white a fair bit stronger, and it doesn't really seem to do that much for black. You should not peep unless there's a particular need or a particular reason to do it. Don't just peep for the sake of, oh, look, there's a peep, I'm going to play it. If black just wanted to play this move, this would be playable, or even this move is frankly just fine. But we don't know that we don't know what the later game is going to be, and so peeping already is not really advantageous for the black player at the moment. But regardless, black does, and then plays this move, and this, of course, somehow tries to attack R14, but it doesn't really seem to work that well. Yeah, this is not a good move. What this is basically doing is demanding that white jump immediately, which white is happy to oblige, and suddenly black is split into two weak groups, and black is very sad. And so black now does another peep, and this is another mistake that I see often here. Black is a 3Q, actually. So this is another mistake that I see very often. Do not peep here in this particular situation when you have a star point stone and a one space jump. This is a particularly bad peep. I really can't emphasize that enough. But the question is, this is a horrific peep. The question is, why is this such a bad peep? Anyone know? Not the Don players preferably. But why is this such a bad peep? Well, sure, it makes white stronger, but anyone have any particular continuations that are, maybe assist us in coming to that conclusion? What can white now do with his stones that he could not safely do before? Oh, well, a move like P11 is possible, I suppose, if he really wants to be vicious. Yeah, so there are, I guess, a few more vicious moves that white can do there, but the real move that I was looking at is, R7, or not R17, but R16. And not only that, but this double hane here. This peep has allowed this move to become much safer if white wants to retain his access to the center. If we look at what happens without this exchange, this is still a possible exchange, of course, even with this is still a possible way of playing later without this exchange, but this can happen. And suddenly, we really wish that white had those stones connected, because black can slice through if white attempts to make life in the corner. But with this exchange, that's no longer possible. And even if black does this, this is meaningless. White really doesn't care. White is thrilled that this happens, and black's shape is a utter mess. So, yeah, very, very bad peep. And so then this is I don't know how much I like this move of white's. White is apparently trying to attack black's eye space. But yeah, not really a great move as white, but black dutifully defends. And yeah, so then white takes this move, which is really a little bit too nice, I think. White can really probably just do this to make himself pretty solid. But regardless, it's still, fine. And now white, yeah, it's not a terrible move. And so now white continues his attack. And this is a possible move, I suppose. Um, I guess it's possible. It's pretty aggressive, but it's playable. And per usual, black just plays this absolute defensive strategy. And this isn't a terrible move here, because it does attack white's eye space a bit. But my problem with it, I guess, is that it really allows white to just continue on his attack. Or to, potentially either seal him in, or just jump out and prepare for an attack against the Q13 stones overall. And so this just does not seem very great for black. White here doesn't play an amazing move. White here takes S14. And this isn't a terrible move, actually. It does defend both of his stones, and it prepares to attack Q13 a bit. But it seems a bit awkward at the moment. I think maybe later on in the game this is a fine move, but still seems, yeah, it's pretty submissive and a bit early to play this move at the moment. It also gives black the opportunity. Well, what black should do is to just, defend his stones and get out. But lo and behold, black decides that he's going to pincer white stone, which is it's pretty aggressive on black's part. Yeah, let's start another weak group. And white's pretty happy, to seal black inside. And this, of course, is a awful move. Yeah, moves like this, just in case that wasn't clear, don't play moves like this. Don't play moves like this. It's very, very, very bad. White is thrilled to just connect his stone. And now K17 just looks kind of silly. And black takes a one space pincer, which is a bit inefficient, really. What black should probably do is maybe something along these lines, and then maybe fight it out with white, like so. Something along these lines, maybe. But that kick is important, because this leaves white with a lot of flexibility. But white decides he's just going to jump. White doesn't even feel the need to take his corner. White just wants to continue his assault on the two stones. And so black jumps out, and now white shifts his attack right to the other group. Yeah, it's a huge target. And now white is making a leaning attack against this Q12 group. And all the while, black's three stones over here are slowly becoming a little bit weaker. Yeah, black's handicap is getting wasted, but still, this just shows you the size of a 4-stone handicap, is that black still has a playable game. The game is not over for black yet. So a move like this requires very complicated reading. And and black manages to get himself out and make himself a bit of an eye space, make himself a bit of an eye. But white isn't particularly sad at this point. Black's group is still floating without two eyes, and white now launches an attack on the other side. And so what black should probably do is, get himself out, and maybe kick once, and get himself out, and continue his attack on white's three stones as best he can. But black decides that this cutting point is very powerful. And this is a good way to make black's outside group stronger. But it has another result. Black is not thinking very globally here. And the problem is that white is happy enough to give up this one stone. And black has made his outside group stronger, but as we should all see, what happens now? Yeah. Cut first, think reasoning later. And black is, of course, horribly disfigured here. And now this is something that you should always prevent yourself from doing. One of the most common mistakes that players make as black is letting themselves get sealed in easily, thinking that, even if I'm sealed in, I can still live. And black can live here if he really works at it, but let's see what happens. So black can play this move, and then black can play this move, and then what black should do is play this move. And, black can live like this, and this lives. But black has done himself a horrible amount of damage on both sides, and he's really, the top right corner is not pleased, and black really isn't really happy anywhere. But black decides this is another problem in handicap games. Black is trying to be greedy. Black is trying to keep all of his upper rights and try and make his really weak top group live. And that just isn't going to happen very easily. And so white just plays very simply here, believing that black has to play another move. And black actually probably does have to play another move. But the problem here is that black is in real danger from death. Black should really just do this move. I think this can live for black. And if this occurs, well, actually, no, white can't do that. So yeah, black can just manage to live here if he's really careful. But black is playing these moves. These type of moves, this is a very good point to look at. These types of moves like J14, which expand your area by constantly pressing against your opponent's barrier. You should only play these types of moves in the most desperate of situations, when you are just so desperate to live and there's nothing else you can do, because at the end of the day, all you're doing is making your opponent's stones much stronger. And it's really just not a good idea, Simply speaking, it's not a good idea. And so black attempts to build up his area, but he makes another mistake here, and black's group is dead. And white plays inside, and plays there, and black group dies. And we could go on, of course, but it's really more of the same. The rest of the game is really more of the same, and this is a good point to take a look at our final professional game. But just another word on this game. This is a great example of how not to play a handicap game. And it's really easy to look on afterwards and say, ha ha ha, he made horrible moves. How could this guy be, how could he be a 3Q? But when you're actually playing the game, you have to deal with the psychological fact that your opponent is likely going to be fairly stronger than you. And that can be fairly intimidating and really change up what you might naturally play. But the thing to keep focused on is don't make tunnel vision. Don't just focus on one or two stones exclusively. If you just focus on trying to seal away as much territory as possible, even if your shape ends up horribly, or if you just focus on, in this situation, just trying to keep all your corners, that's oftentimes the worst strategy you can possibly make in a handicap game. The star points are not necessarily... The star points are very flexible. Sometimes they can take territory, but other times they're great at just building up big walls and attacking the living bejesus out of your opponent's stones. So, to finish up, I don't know if you guys want to, we will go through our second professional game, which is a 5-stone game. And this has another interesting professional's name that some of you might be aware of, Kato Masao. He was, how old was he at the time? He was also 12 years old. No. Kato Masao was black, and he was 12 years old, and he actually wasn't a professional yet. And he himself, actually reviewed this game like 30 or 40 years afterwards. A few years ago, he reviewed his own game as a kid and gave his commentary. And I think those type of games are really cool because you have professionals that really review themselves. And he himself said that he was about amateur 5-dan strength, which is pretty similar to a KGS 4-dans. So it was interesting to see being similar to my own strength at the time at age 12. And seeing how a professional would attempt to defeat him. So he plays a strong game overall, but he makes some big mistakes. Unlike the game we saw with Takemiya, who was already a professional, who played a lot more solidly, Kato Masao was not a professional yet. And of course his opponent was Kitani Minoru, which is a pretty well-known name itself in the Go world. So let's see how their game progressed. Yeah, Kitani is pretty damn strong. So, this is interestingly, now this is the type of thing we talked about in the last game as something you probably don't want to do as a white player. Of course, The exception to this, of course, Katani can take all of the exceptions he likes. His style is super territorial. Yeah, well, Katani's style is just ultra territorial, and so White's idea here is to just build up a solid group here, and hope that Black has weak groups nearby later on that he can start attacking. But White is very territorial in your own games. Unless you are extraordinarily confident in your play, I would not recommend playing like this as the White player. Just a general recommendation. So Black. So our Kato Masao actually makes his first mistake here. He says later on that he should not have played at K3. That actually Q10 is the biggest move on the board, and it's pretty easy to see why. With this stuff, obviously it's Sanrense, and also it makes two great continuations. Black can either follow up on the top or the bottom, and it's a great way either way. And the reason why K3 is a bit smaller is that once again White has this really strong group right here. So it's a little bit harder for Black to develop his own position nearby. So this is just subtle things that professionals are complaining about in the opening. But. Very good. Yes, very good. So the game continues apace, and White approaches here, and Kato decides that this was actually a much more common move back then. These days, it's not as common for Black to play, but still possible. This is playable. A little bit, perhaps a little bit defensive for Black, but it's certainly possible. Kato said after the game that looking back on it, he would probably prefer this move. Now, the reason being is that rather than attempt to build a moyo like E14, which wouldn't be good here, Black goes for big corner here. And the reason being is that this is the result that you will see. And so the question is, this is a pretty standard variation, but why might Black particularly like this Joseki at this point in the game? Well, it's not that he's necessarily over-concentrated, because it is, a three-space extension from a two-stone wall, but the key here is that White was already strong on the left side. Right, this is simple. White was already strong on the left side. And so what? White became a little bit stronger. Perhaps, if White is already strong, it's the law of diminishing returns. If your groups are already strong on a single side, if they're made stronger still, it's not that big of a loss. So White has made some points on the left side, but Black has strength everywhere else on the board. And, in a handicap game, that's not a fantastic position for White to be in. Yeah. So Black just plays like this, and White immediately dives into the corner, which is a pretty common technique. The idea being here, once again, White is focusing on his very slow but steady play here. The idea here is that even if Black builds a big wall, it doesn't matter. Well, it doesn't matter as much, because White has this really strong group here, and so that once Black tries to make an extension, White will be able to have this really tough group. And yeah, exactly. So the game continues pretty simply here. Now, one move that we might consider as Black is this move, but in a handicap game, I would recommend caution when playing the G18 Joseki, because it has a known reputation in handicap games for becoming particularly complicated. And really, it's needlessly complicated at this early point. What's likely going to happen is something along these lines. And now White's going to cut here. And now you have a complicated fight. And, Black will probably be able to live on both sides, but it really depends on both players' fighting skills. And really, you don't need to fight at this early. Black, as the player who's Black, you should never be afraid to fight, but you shouldn't enter into fights that you just don't need to if there's a much safer, solid way of playing that doesn't really lose you that much. And Black follows just that and plays this very simple connection move, which keeps his stones nice and solid. And then White takes the corner, and Black fills, and White gets sent to play elsewhere. So, Black has just played, White has just taken the sensei to play a stone like O17. And the question we have is, what should Black do about it? Should Black Tanuki and play elsewhere? Should black attack the stone? Should black just defend Q16? What are your guys' ideas? Lots of ideas coming in. Too busy weeping over the top left. Well, top left isn't that bad for black. I mean, black still has big thickness, so it's not that bad. So, N16. Well, N16 is actually kind of funny. You could consider that, sure. O16. Q14. Huh. Lots of pretty common moves. So, the idea here that that black should focus on is that yeah, C11 is pretty big. But the idea that black should focus on is that white stone is not strong, and black should attack white stone. But the question being, how should black attack white stone? And that's a very difficult question to answer. I'm not a huge fan of this move here, because if black tries to, do a Moyo building strategy, it allows white to become strong rather quickly. And I mean, looking at the whole board, this isn't a horrible idea for black, but it needlessly makes white strong, or it needlessly makes white 100% strong. Even though black can build a formation, white just never needs to worry about this group ever again, and he can play elsewhere. Pincering here, I'm not a huge fan of any type of pincer here, because it seems a bit too close to this H17 stone. But nevertheless, there's still a great way to attack. P15, Takemiya style, right. So, Kato's move was actually Q14, which he later criticized himself as being very weak. This is a very poor move for black here, because what white will do is just do this, and exactly like the game, he just does the exact same defense of Joseki. And here it's fantastic. Black's powerful wall is looking like a floating stick, and white stones are safe. And white is very satisfied. What he criticized, he says he should have played, yes, as you said, P17 is a very powerful move here, because white cannot safely play a 3-space extension. White is actually forced to take a 2-space extension in this case. Of course, if he attempts to do a 3-space extension, black takes this in Sente, and then can just play this. And white cannot be happy with this situation. So what actually can happen here is that black can just finish up his formation with Q10 and then just play at his leisure from here. I mean, black has this move in Sente, and then after white responds, black can just dive in like this and rip out his eyes. Or if white attempts to stop that by playing this move, black can just jump and attack those 2 stones. So white's group is not particularly thrilled floating around. I mean, white could just defend like this, but that really can't leave white satisfied to just at this critical juncture let black take another gigantic move. This is a recipe for disaster for the white player. So white is very happy to have made his stones safe, and now it is black's turn. And any ideas what black should do? Q11, classic move for building up points. Not necessarily a terrible idea. QR10, everyone looking at those big points over there. C11. Yes, you have found young Kato's move here. And Kato says that this is a fine move for black to take here, although looking back, considering that his opponent was among the strongest 9-dan professionals at the time, he actually considered just playing this move out of pure simplicity, just to ensure that his group was alive, although he said that this is very, very, very slow for black to play, and in an even game you would probably not consider it. But considering the strength difference and just how safe it makes black's group, and the fact that black really is doing fine overall, even though his slight mistakes in territory, that this is possible. But regardless, he plays this move, and suddenly white's B4 group isn't looking as strong as before. It's still pretty strong, But white doesn't have any time to play defensively. He goes all out and attacks black's group. And black caps him, and white jumps, and black escapes, and white plays here. And this is one of the most important points in the game, I think, to focus on. You know, if you can find the next 4 moves or so for white and black to play, then I would bow my hat to you as a fairly strong player with a good grasp of whole board thinking. Because the next move is one that Kato got wrong, and it really, really cost him for the rest of the game. So what is the proper move for black to play here? And then what will happen, you know, say 3 moves in, what will happen? So we have an idea for C13. Yeah, Tengen is taken. Geez, what are you ever going to do? F10. F10. No one else has any ideas to throw on the board? Let's see, B4. B4. There's already a stone there. E9. H12. B14. C8. Lots of ideas. So, well, one of you will be happy to know that one of you found Kato's wrong move. Kato's move was E9, which he later considered very, very slack. Yeah, he criticized himself very strongly for this move, saying that he had a very, very poor sense of direction at this point in his game. But the proper move is actually one that someone suggested. The proper move for black here is pretty simple. It's just H12. And white's natural continuation is just to go here, and black's natural continuation is to go here. And just, you know, the beauty of the 3 moves is black's move forces white, which forces black. And black stones are now being used very well. Black's stones in the center have escaped. White stones here are starting to attack black's C9 stones. And white stones here are slowly starting to be entrapped within black's area here. Black is pretty happy with this happening. But black takes this move, and white takes this opportunity to immediately. Apparently, he said in the review that white took less than 2 seconds to think about this move and just threw it on the board, because there is no other move on the board that he said white could possibly consider playing. It is simply too big. And now, suddenly, black's gigantic group is floating with no eyes. And he actually criticized himself here once again. Black's proper move here, well, let's see if anyone has any ideas. Should black spend another move to defend his H17 group? Or should black play somewhere else and defend his E11 stones? What's black's next move? Young Kato. Play somewhere else. C13 idea. Well, in actuality, what he did was he thought that he was attacking white stones, and he plays G10, which is a fair move at connecting his stones and potentially building a bottom area. But the problem is it leaves black center stones to their horrible fate. What he said he should have done afterwards is he should have done this, and then white extend up, and then jump. And now black stones are pretty escaped, and white stones are still floating. And, you know, with just 3 moves, the game has really shifted. But he plays over here, and once again, white is more than happy to take b14, and black forces, black forces, and then black keeps separate with b11. And black stones are still pretty weak, but white's b4 stones are not particularly thrilled. So first white wants to make his center stone stronger. So he touches in here and pulls back, and he lets black build some thickness. But this additional strength that white has given his group is going to be very, very effective in attacking black's weak stones up here later on. And now white plays a very, very important move. Any ideas what should white play here? There's really only one move on the entire board that white can consider playing, and it's at least what he says. And it's very it's not a move that would immediately come to my mind, I suppose, but apparently it is the only move that can be played. Let's see, we have some J14 suggestions. We have D5. J14 and D5. Well, J14 is, of course, a tempting desire to want to attack those stones, but in this particular situation, we have K14. But in this particular situation, white is actually very, very worried about his C6 stones. If he's worried that if he gives black another move, they might die. So white actually takes this as what he calls the only move that he can play, because it also is looking at this move. You know, this cutted A becomes a lot more powerful once white has this E6 move. So it's not only a defensive move, it is a offensively oriented move as well. But let's say for the sake of argument that white tanukis, black has this very, very interesting little attachment here, and then a double hane. And because of the B11 stone, yeah, exactly, a perfect way to use B11. And white has no choice but to play like so, and black is of course thrilled. And then white has to cry and live like this. Yeah, exactly. And white is naturally sobbing with agony at this point. So this E6 move is the only move that white has to play. And black plays a very soft move here. He once again criticizes himself for playing a soft move. This diagonal really just doesn't do that much. He said that if he was going to play over here, he should have played this move, which is perfectly safe and does more. But more stringently, he said that playing over there overall is a bad idea. He said there's another more vital area for black to play in. And once again, it's the same strategy. That he should have done this and gotten himself out. His group here is still crying with agony over how weak it is. But he doesn't. He goes to seal white in. And what this does do, actually, this is kind of sente, because white stones are still not 100% alive because of black's B11. So white actually plays this B3 move to ensure that he lives. And so now the question is, this opens up a lot of AGA. This opens up this E3 move, which is a big loss territorially for black if he takes it. So the question is, should black fix this E3 or this E3 weakness, or should black defend his H17 group? Yeah, white will be happy, but black really has no choice but to defend these stones, because these are just too big to allow white to get a severe attack against. But once again, Kato makes a mistake and just defends here because he wants to keep his corner. Yeah, he defended. Well, he was only, he said the equivalent of a 5-dan amateur at the time. So white is now thrilled to, as Hiro suggested, take this K14 move, which is a very vicious and very powerful attack. And suddenly black stones have no, you're right, yeah, very good. And suddenly black stones are not looking too happy. So black now has to run around inside and find eyes for himself. Black is right now probing to see how white will respond. And yeah, the fighting gets pretty complex in here. It's getting a little bit later. I would go into a lot of the interesting variations. Maybe if we have time another day, I can show some of the really cool variations that show off why each of these players is playing their particular probing and cutting techniques. But regardless, at this point, Black is still pretty sad with himself that he's had to do all this, and White has become stronger. Black manages to make himself strong, but here actually is a real mistake, one of the major life mistakes that Black made. What Black should do here is this move, because this is a subtly different move, which allows Black to make an eye at the bottom, because he can do this, and then this, if he needs to make an emergency eye. So just slightly better shape for Black. And White manages to capture the 2 stones. Black manages to live. And this is not exactly pleasant for Black, but regardless, 5 stones is a huge handicap. And even with all of this that has happened, Black is still in a fine position to win the game. So Black first takes these forcing moves, and now Black plays a move that really shows off Kato's fighting spirit. Any ideas what is a really, really vicious move that Kato can play here just to, challenge White to an all-out fight? K12, right idea, but bad shape. The move is actually K13. And this now sets the stage for the final fight of the game, which is basically a all-out contest for control of the center. It's very important to Black that he attempt to win this fight, because if he can manage to capture those 2 stones, it basically gives Black a pretty powerful area in this right side area. White, of course, Kitana Minori is not likely to allow this to happen. So he resists, and Black resists, and now both players are being pretty vicious in their fighting with one another. And White cuts him off. And now it is rather than playing a safer move, White decides to accept Black's challenge. And now it's an all-out fight, because Black doesn't 100% have 2 eyes yet if White is allowed to take Sente. But Black doesn't want to just, make life with a move like this. Black decides that he wants to destroy White's 2 stones. And so he decides that he's going to keep up his attack. And White takes his 3 forcing moves. And this is a great forcing move, of course, to stop the 2 eyes. And now, Kato said after the game that this move was not really a proper move. This is more of like a asking move. This is more of like a move that a sensei would play with his student to say, okay, you want to challenge me to a fight, then let us fight, and I want to see what you'll do. But the real proper move for White in this case, apparently, is to just descend here and then jump out like this to give White some breathing room, and then allow Black to live as well. And so this is Honte. This is the proper way of playing. But he wanted to test his student, so he accepted his challenge to a all-out fight to the death. And so Black now makes this very, very powerful move. And White attempts to cut. And Black continues his attack. Both players, Black is trying to maximally restrict White's liberties, but White is working to keep them. But now, right here, we have Black's final mistake that cost him the game. Had Black played the proper move here, he said he probably had a modest, a fairly okay chance at winning the fight. But Black makes a reading mistake and believes that this move successfully seals in White. But as we read on, this is not necessarily the case. We get a all-out vicious fight going on. So Black decides to allow him to capture, and then come out here with that vicious Hane. And now White has a very powerful Hane in the bottom, and he makes shape with S11, and Black has no choice but to respond like this. And now White even has time to aggressively cut. And Black tries his utmost to resist him. So White's doing a probing move. And then just an empty triangle escape. And the vicious fight continues, and Black now must do his utmost to prevent White from making eyes. And so Black attempts and White attempts to run, and Black is doing everything he can to seal White in, letting him capture stone after stone, and forcing them all to become false eyes. Black has essentially gambled the game that he can kill his teacher. And this is a pretty one way in how it follows. But this cut does it in for Black. Black can resist like this, but White just plays here. And now, if Black keeps his stone safe like this, White just extends to here and ensures that he can live. If Black resists, White just plays like so, and then ensures that he has 2 eyes over here, and that mostly sums it up as over. So this is an example of, starting off very well, but then you make, when you're fighting with a stronger player in a handicap game, you have to be very, very careful in your fights. You have to strike a very good balance. If you just don't fight at all and you let them push you around, then you're going to lose your game very, very quickly. But that being said, you need to balance that with a desire to avoid unnecessarily insane fights. If a very simple variation will do the trick stuff... Funny, Rugus. If a very simple Joseki will do the trick, and you don't need to start up a vicious fight, then just don't. But that being said, this sums up this lecture on Handicap Go. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to my commentary on the 3 games and looking at the professionals commenting on their own games from the past. Just goes to show that not everyone, even the strongest professionals, were once fallible youngsters that made mistakes like anyone else. But yeah, I hope you guys learned something, and I hope to see you next week. So with that being said, farewell.